guys, I am Soundr. I am a EDM top line vocalist, songwriter, as well as an independent artist of my own. So I get
Excellent.
hired to write and record for people all over the world.
Awesome. Great to have you here.
Yeah,
Before
thank
you
you.
became a full-time musician, you were working at a financial firm, correct?
Yeah, I used to work at a CPA firm. I essentially acted as their client relations
Mm.
manager and managed a team full of people that dealt with our customers and our clients.
Why did you do that?
I moved, so I was born and raised in Salt Lake,
Okay.
and we moved back and forth, my family and I, as a teenager, and then we moved back to Salt Lake, and I wanted to stay in Denver the whole time. So at 19, I decided that it was time to move back. I had $1,000 in my bank account, no job, no place to live, was just couch hopping, and just was like, hey, Denver's the move. I'm gonna make it happen. And got offered a temporary position at that firm just as like an admin. And it was supposed to be 3 months, and it ended up being 6.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap. How old are you?
27.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're like
I always
a few
have
years
to
older.
think about how old I am.
You
Everybody
don't,
asks that, and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Age is just a number anyways, it's fine.
Yeah, right.
Did you go to school? Is there any prior schooling to like finance or anything like that? Or was it just an opportunity that you took?
No, just an opportunity. I mean, I've
Okay.
worked in so many different industries though. I mean, I worked full time essentially since I was 17. So I did like HR at an engineering firm. I have managed coffee shops and stuff like that. I also worked at an interlock place, which was super interesting. You know, when people get a DUI
Hmm.
and like have to have that installed. And then at the CPA firm. So it was very out of left field. I had no idea what I was doing, but I kind of have a history of just like, okay, let's learn, like, let's do this,
Yeah.
you know, just step
which
into
is
the
which
role.
is why you've probably you've been so successful in music because that's kind of what you have to do. Just kind of full
Yeah, you
send to
definitely
take the
do.
leap.
Yeah, you don't, yeah, none of us know anything actually. It's
Yeah.
just all just making it up as we go.
Yeah, and working our butts off to make something happen,
Yeah,
no matter what that
seriously.
is. Yeah. Did you always know that your real passion was music, even though you were kind of working those other jobs?
Yeah, I did. I was actually so at the accounting firm specifically, I was working crazy overtime. And still in the studio, you know, 3, 4 times a
Mm,
week, writing every single night, juggling both things. So it's always been, you know, my careers that I've had have always been kind of a side hustle to a means to an end to get me to where I need to be with
got it.
music.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've looked at everything else too. It's just like I'm working now, and that transition it eventually inevitably happens, but you kind of do have to do that like just super grind of like working almost treating your music career as a career while
Yeah.
working a normal career, and it's like you're working basically two
Yeah,
full-time
two
jobs.
full-time jobs. Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
nuts.
Yeah, I am very familiar with that. And it
Yeah.
is really hard and it's really easy to burn out, but
Yeah.
it's definitely I feel like necessary to get to the next step.
Absolutely. How did you financially make that transition from the 9 to 5 to a musician? How was that transition for you?
So I've it's kind of a funny question because this is now the second time that I transitioned into doing music full time.
Oh,
The
wow.
first
Okay.
time, um, I don't feel like I had the confidence the first time. I was just like, yeah, I'm making enough money, you know, let's do it. And I didn't really have the confidence in myself as a human being and in my art
Hmm.
to full send to just be like, yeah, this is what's up. This is what I'm doing. And now, it kind of happened by accident. I was working at a mortgage firm, actually, a mortgage
Okay.
agency as an underwriter. Um, and they had a huge layoff, and I got laid off and was working at a sushi spot and was just like, man, this does not feel it. Like, I don't feel like I'm in alignment with my path in
Like this
life.
is just a job.
Yeah, yeah, and just
Yeah.
in general, like felt like something was off. Like I
Yeah.
was like not stepping into like who I needed to be. And played the show in Tampa with Swarm, and he's one of my really good friends, he and Lauren both, and
Oh
we were
yeah.
all
Yep.
talking about it, and she was like, "Dude, why? Like,
Hmm.
why do you need another job? Well, just do it. Like, just do it." And so I did. I had already put in my 2 weeks at the sushi place, and I had another job offer at another firm,
Okay.
and instead of taking it, I was
You
just
just
like, "All
took the
right,
risk.
this is what we're doing now. Let's go."
Financially, how did that work out for you?
I definitely had like the first month I had savings built up
Perfect.
from,
Yep.
you know, previous jobs, but I am also in a very unique position as a top liner where I do make money on the front end. I do make money off
Right.
of fees and stuff as well as royalties, but really cash flow wise, that is, how I'm able to pay my bills and stuff month to
Right.
month. So it was kind of like I didn't really have any like startup costs like you would think of
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
starting a business. It's just I get hired to do, what I love. And I've been very, very, very fortunate to have that continue to grow.
At what age did you start becoming a musician? When did that journey really start for you?
I've been singing my entire life.
Okay.
Like I remember I did like a kindergarten talent show and sang. But I asked for a guitar for my 13th birthday, and didn't get it. It was so sad. And then my uncle surprised me for Christmas that year and got me a guitar,
Nice.
and I just started teaching myself. And I had already been writing poetry for so long that kind of adding in guitar and like writing vocals was just kind of like a natural evolution to that.
Got it. So yeah, so going back to your initial cost, you pretty much already had the equipment then because you've been doing it for forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely like you have to invest in like a mic and interface, like
Yeah.
monitors, stuff like that. Um, but I also think it's important to note that you can start for relatively
Yeah.
cheap. You don't need these crazy $10,000 mics to start
They make
doing
USB
what you're
mics.
doing. Yeah, right, right, right.
Yeah.
And eventually, sure, it's like fun to have awesome gear and it
Right.
does
Right.
improve. But to start off, like, I don't feel like we should be gatekeeping and making people feel like you have to make tons of money to be able to make music because you
Yeah, I
don't.
definitely don't. So what is top lining? Because I've been getting that question a lot, and a lot of people are just like, I don't know, like it's just a vocalist on the track. Like, can you break down like what that really means?
Yeah, it's kind of just an industry word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to tell
Um,
people. It's like, yeah, it's just like the
yeah.
featured vocalist, but it's just like what they call it, I think.
Yeah. So essentially, I get handed an instrumental. Somebody hires
Mhm.
me and wants to feature me on a track. I get handed an instrumental. I write the lyrics, the melody, the harmonies, the ad libs, everything. I record it, edit it, and send them back a completely edited, fully vocal produced
Interesting.
vocal. Yeah.
How do you normally get approaches from artists? Probably at this point you do because you worked with some bigger artists like Blank and Midas and stuff. But originally, did you have to like pitch yourself to producers and stuff like that? How did you get yourself out there?
Yes. Yeah. It's also actually kind of funny for me to think about how it started because it was completely by accident. Like
Okay.
I wasn't huge into dance music at all. I was just making music, doing covers,
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. And Ramses B actually reached out to me on SoundCloud, I think, and was like, "Hey, do you want to do a top line?" And I was like, "I have no idea what that is, but sure, let's do it." And that song, he's big enough that song kind of helped me snowball.
Yep.
And again, following the theme in my life, I had no idea what I was doing, but was just
Yep.
like, "Hey, let's learn, let's go." And in the beginning, a lot of it was just like reaching out to people, just kind of like cold calling, cold emailing. And as I did, collaborate with bigger and bigger artists, that has gotten less and less. And I am fortunate that people kind of reach out to me now.
Yeah.
But I also have a team of managers that, thank God, handle all of that stuff because it's a difficult thing to kind of put a monetary value on your art. So to have that separation of somebody else handling that, I think is very
Right.
beneficial.
Right. And I think even for me, like with this podcast, I'm starting to like build out my own team and like with like
Yeah.
looking for a social media, like someone to help me with social media stuff. I'm looking for, I have a podcast editor who already she's actually my roommate, but building a team around you, you don't realize it. Like at first you're like, oh, I can do this all on my own, which you can in the early
Yeah.
phases, but it gets to a certain point where you're like, this is way too much. Like I have to like
Yeah.
I have to focus on what I'm actually like here to do. Like for you, it's like singing, or like for me, it's like
Yeah.
talking to people. Like, yeah, it's so important. It's just such a game changer when you actually have a team around you.
It is. And that awareness of like, I'm now standing in my own way. If I don't start delegating stuff, like I've peaked. I'm not going to be able to grow any further than that.
Because I can only put so much on my plate. And if you
Right.
overload your plate, you're spreading yourself way too thin.
Right. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to delegate. I just barely this week had a conversation with my team about that because I'm just like, I have some things that I kind of need to push off to somebody else. But it's hard. It's hard to let
Very
go
hard.
something that's your baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to like working with like other producers and stuff. In a perfect world, what would be like your preferred process? Because I know there's different ways that you can kind of collaborate with other people. What would make you want to come back and continue working with the same producer over and over?
Um, that's a great question. I think having like a personal connection to somebody always is really great. A lot of the process right now is here's the instrumental, write a vocal, whatever. So it's kind of more disconnected. At least for the first one.
Yeah.
Usually after at least one song, I have like a relationship or a friendship with that producer. But I'll go back to like Swarm, for example. We did one song together, and it was just he trusted me with the whole thing. There was no guidance. There was no like, oh, I don't really care for that. It was like just full expression, and he was all on board for it. So it felt very collaborative, and that is specifically why I love working with people like that respect the art, not just like, oh, you do a top line, like whatever, as a second thought. I definitely appreciate the collaborative side.
Do you think it's different, like when you are working? Because there is like a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's the producer. Obviously, the producer has a job when collaborating with vocalists, but like a lot of people don't realize, like, 'cause for the most part, you write all the lyrics and stuff for all the top line work, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Which most of the time, like not always, but like a lot of the time when you have a vocal or even a vocal sample, you're almost basing the entire song around whatever that vocal is. So it's almost like you're almost like, a lot of people don't see, you're almost like the front man in that, and then they're just building the bass around the vocal that you are providing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily think that like how people say one part is more important than the other.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think that I'm in such a unique position in that way, where I can work with so many different people in so many different genres and still have that collaborative thing where it's like, this is what I do and you're in a completely different world. So like learning together is also really awesome.
I've seen you a lot on like bass music type, top line work. What do you primarily do that, or do you do other styles of genres, and which one's your favorite if you do?
I don't know if I have a favorite.
Okay.
But that kind of happened by accident. I just got sent a whole bunch of future bass stuff, and like in the beginning, that's all I wrote. I swear every instrumental I got was just future bass, which is fine. Like I love it. I think that in bass music, there's so much room for storytelling and
that's what I was about
like
to say
lyric
too.
direction.
With that, take us through your process. Like, what does your process really look like, start to finish? Where do you draw inspiration from? Like, what does that look like when you are writing?
Every single time I write, it is different.
Okay.
Every single time. There's not, there's no, I mean, I guess there's like kind of a method, but usually I'll get an instrumental in, and when I sit down to write it, I'll throw it in Ableton. That's what I work out of, is Ableton. I'll go through and listen and kind of outline where I think each part's going to go with little like markers, like where the verse is and stuff like that. And then I'll really just loop a part and just kind of hum melodies or like feel it out. And
I've seen a lot of people do that, where they're just like, they hum melodies, and it's just kind of like it's kind of almost like the lyrics come to them almost.
Yeah, it's so corny, but I used to say like, what is this song telling me? Like, what story is this trying to tell? And it really does come out very quickly. If you're like, usually it's like a word or a phrase or like a feeling or a story that comes up. And then a lot of it is just playing it over and over and over and over until I come up with a melody.
Tweaking things slightly.
Yeah, exactly. And usually for me, sometimes lyrics come first, but usually it's kind of one and the same, where it's like certain words fit a certain cadence or like the story. But I also really like going into a song with like a storyline that I want to tell, or like some theme that I want to work for. Danny King and I just wrote a song like that, where we sat down to write and we were like, okay, what's the coolest, like most badass thing we could write about, and just researched a bunch of like articles on mythology and stuff. So
really sweet. Cool. When you first started your becoming a top line vocalist, did you ever, or musician in the first place, did you ever envision yourself becoming a top line vocalist? Is that kind of like you wanted to do a solo project?
That's always been my focus, and my goal has been a solo project. But man, I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to grow in dance music.
It provided you that initial platform to where now you can branch off and
I've learned so much in like just working. I'm
Right.
learning every single song I do. I'm learning, and I don't think like let's say how old was I when I started top lining? Like 22 or something like that.
Okay.
20, I don't know. I have no idea. But there's no way that back then I would have been ready to be a solo artist and succeed. You know, I
Yeah.
had so
Yeah.
much to learn, so much room to grow, and I think that that is exactly what top lining has done for me.
What do you think some of the biggest lessons that you have learned that prepared you for your solo journey?
Patience
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And also how to take no's without letting it impact like your worth as a
Right.
human being and your worth as an artist. You know, we hear
Criticism is
we
hard. Very
yeah,
hard.
we get no's so much more than yeses. Nobody's perfect. I'm not going to say that every single time I hear a no, it doesn't impact me. Some days are just like, damn, like that one stings.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think just like resilience and being hungry for it. Like you just, I don't know. I not that I wasn't hungry for it back then, but kind of being in it and like being in the grit of it definitely kind of solidified that in me, my hunger for what I really want to do.
Yeah. So tell me a little about your solo project. What genre is it primarily based around? Because I know it's not EDM.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It is alternative.
Okay.
Lots of pop punk, lots of like emo, early 2000, late 90s, early 2000s alternatives like Linkin Park
Interesting.
and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
How's
Basically,
what's the market for that? Is that
um
is it a smaller market, you think?
no,
At
I
least
don't
than what it
necessarily
used to?
maybe.
Yeah.
I really think that like seeing Black Bear and like MGK
Ah,
and Youngblood and stuff like that really blow up um is kind of paving the way for a lot of people to
the
come
newer
back to
wave.
that.
Yeah.
And not that it like ever went anywhere, because I am a hardcore, die-hard emo fan, and I will be till I die. So it didn't go anywhere, but it definitely is like being brought to the forefront. Like it's a
Yeah.
mainstream genre
Yeah.
now.
I never thought about that. Yeah. MGK is along those same lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with like this Sounder branding and like what kind of message are you trying to provide with your solo project?
Yeah, the name Soundr is actually a play on the word Sonder, which
Ah, okay.
yeah, essentially is recognizing like awareness and respect for the fact that all of us have subjective individual experiences on this planet. You know, none even if we experience the same thing together, it's not the exact same, you know, because it's
Yeah.
your own experiences, your past, your conditioning and stuff like that. Um, so it's like kind of the feeling of that being lonely, but also unifying in a way where it's like, yeah, we're all experiencing this different thing together.
Right.
Um,
I find that's a very relatable topic, like just in music is in general. It's like everyone's on the same path. We all kind of experience the same thing. And that's why I, created the podcast around like
yeah,
what I did is just like to show that like we all are going through the same journey. And even though like
yeah.
I'm a podcast host, you're a vocalist. At the
Nice.
end of the day, we all are experiencing the same thing. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's really just like as corny as this sounds
Yep.
to make a place where like it's okay. Like I that's what I want my project to stand for is like
That's
making a
awesome.
place where you can show up exactly as you are. You know, there's no pressure to look, act, talk, sound a specific way. It's just we're human beings and
Yep.
like I want everyone that listens to my music and people that I interact with to be comfortable showing up exactly as they are, not
And I
being
think
different.
I don't know how much I'm not really into that style of music, but it's kind of funny how you ended up in EDM because that is very much like at the end of the day, it's like
Yeah.
the origin of electronic music is that we all just are one big family. That's what I love
Yeah.
about it so much. But yeah, it's interesting how like you did end up doing EDM work, even though that wasn't your intention. You have a very similar like branding behind it.
Yeah.
Do you find that like because you are a top line vocalist and you still have your own project, how did you manage to like grow and continue growing independently? Even because I know a lot of like for like Dylan Matthews, for example, he is struggling because he wants to have a solo project, but because of his success with the Slander Boys, he's having like a tough dichotomy there. Do you struggle with
Sure.
that too?
Um, I'm sure to an extent,
Yeah.
but I I don't really care if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do care. Obviously, I want to be successful, but it's just like I'm going to continue doing dance music top lines and I am going to never stop my
Yeah.
own project. So it's like I am just so confident and convicted in pursuing my own project. And like that's such a huge part of me that
Right.
it's like I feel like and hope that the fan bases see the authenticity and vulnerability in that and kind of follow it.
Yeah. So it's kind of almost like one and the same for you in your own head.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what I do. I love doing top lines,
Yeah.
but my own project is definitely like there's
Your
something to
love.
be said. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
be said about having your hands on every piece of a project and making it exactly what you want it to be and not being worried about like saying something that sounds weird or
Hmm.
like something super off the wall out there kind of thing that maybe I wouldn't approach with top lines.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because you got to think about the other person's brand too, where it's in that
Exactly.
case, it's your brand. Yeah. Do whatever
Exactly.
you want in your brand.
Yeah, and being able to talk about like more sensitive subjects, like darker
Yeah.
things and even just like mental health stuff, just being vulnerable in general, I think is something that is really important to me in my
Yeah.
project.
What is your ultimate goal with Soundr? What is your big vision? Where do you want to take like your solo project?
Touring.
Touring, yeah.
That's been my goal for as long as I can remember is just touring, playing live shows, and just really making that the focus. Top lines will come and go, I'm sure, but I want to be in a position where I'm just creating all the time.
How far away do you think you are from doing like your first tour as Soundr?
I'm not sure. That's something that we talk about as a team
Right.
quite often is like what does the next year, 3 years, 5 years
Mhm.
look like, And I've felt like for the last little while that I'm like standing on a ledge just like waiting for the next phase to hit. Like I know something is going to shift. I know that there is something bigger coming in the
It's
near
crazy because it's
future.
like all of a sudden it seems like for like everyone, it's just like all of a sudden it just happens. And you're just
Yeah,
like you wake
and
up one day and you're like, how did I get here?
that's kind of the vibe that I have. It's
Yeah.
just like I know I'm on the right path. I know I'm doing the right things. We're working hard.
Keep showing up.
And yeah, it's going to happen. I really hope that, in the next 2 years or so, touring is definitely a thing.
Sweet. What have you released so far as Soundr? Because I know that that project you didn't start Soundr, like you've been a vocalist and stuff for a long time, but you didn't really start the Soundr project until like mid-pandemic, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's not even a year old. Yeah, I'm just looking at the dates.
Yeah.
Hasn't even been a year since my first release, which is something that I try really hard to keep in perspective. I try not to compare myself to other artists and like other artist progression and
That's
stuff,
so
but
hard in the music industry. It's so hard.
it's so difficult, and I feel like a healthy level of like not competition with other people, like but with competition with
Mhm.
yourself is like a good thing. But sometimes I'm like, man, I'm not where I want to be, and I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, it's been a year. Like,
Yeah.
the Soundr project started in March 2020, March or
Okay.
April 2020, and then we released the first song in June of 2021. So
Gotcha.
it's been in process, but first release was in June of last year.
Got it.
Yeah, was working full time, crazy hours like a maniac, and
Ugh.
still was in the studio every single day that I possibly could, working crazy hours. But I
Mhm.
just was like, it's time. Like I'm hungry for this. I want to be releasing stuff that shows a different side of me. And
Right.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. We wrote a lot of songs during the pandemic.
Where a lot of those songs, I know you released an EP, right, with Under
Yeah.
Soundr so
Mhm.
far, where a lot of those songs, like what ended up eventually being on the EP.
Yeah, I think there's maybe 3 songs in addition to that have not been released yet. But yes, all of the EP was written during that time as well.
Tell me a little about that EP, because I know it stemmed a lot from your struggles with your own mental health, and it's kind of like what the backbone of the EP meant. What was like the writing process for that EP, and like what were your intentions going into that?
That EP was such a learning curve. Because I had been so used to writing to please a client, for lack of better words. You are writing for somebody else or someone else's project. And with that, I just was like, let's get into the studio and just see what happens. I have so many stories and so many things that I've been through as a human being, both difficult and unfortunate, and also obviously beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I necessarily was like, yeah, I want to write a project. It was more of just like, let's start. let's just go. Let's just make the music and see what happens, and like see if we make a complete cohesive project.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with that EP, it's not necessarily like front to back storytelling, like having a theme or
Right,
like
right.
a story.
Like you see a lot of other artists, they're when you write a body of work, a lot of times it says one main story.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. This one specifically, I think, was just like evidence of me testing the boundaries of where I can go. There's, 3 or 4 different genres in the EP.
That's a very smart idea, because then it's just like, okay, let's put this out. Let's see what the audience likes the most, and then you can kind of choose a direction based off that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really wanted to establish early on that I'm not going to let myself be boxed in.
Yeah.
I
So smart.
love so
So
many
smart.
different genres,
Yep.
It's I don't ever want to be like, crap, I can't release this song that I love because everybody expects me to do XYZ thing. It's just like not in who I am. But I think the main theme was just vulnerability, and like, here's these stories, here's the things that I've been struggling with, and like the unfortunately a lot of it is really dark.
Yeah.
It's just, here's my mind, here's what I've been going through, and like, if you hear it, hopefully you hear that you're not alone in that.
Very true. I need to go back and listen to that, because we've all had our own struggles, but
Yeah.
I've listened to it once through, and I loved it. But my next question, because it was based off your journey with your own mental health and stuff like that, what have been some of your main challenges with your mental health?
Um,
If you want to talk about it, you don't have to.
yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just trying to like
Yeah.
make a list, like go through. Um, I've been through a lot of difficult things in my life, and I think that a lot of artists have. I think that really just drives creativity to kind of get that out.
Yep.
But I was just really struggling with depression, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. Like, the pandemic hit, and not because of that, but just like coincidentally at the same time, I really, really was struggling. I was very depressed. I was dealing with what felt like, like manic episodes where I just felt like
What
I
is
was
that?
in a so it's something that people that are diagnosed with bipolar disorder
Ah,
experience, where it's just huge fluctuations between like super, super low and just like very high energy, like for me, I can only speak from my experience.
right.
Obviously, I'm not like a counselor, therapist, or like licensed on any of that. But for me, it was like one day I could not get out of bed. I couldn't function. I couldn't eat, nothing. And then the next day it was like, nothing can touch me. Nothing can hurt me. I don't feel anything. I'm just like full of energy, going a million miles an hour.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, and it's very isolating
Yeah.
because I wasn't in a position where I felt empowered to like talk to people around me about it. So I was just like in my own head, fluctuating between these highs and lows and dissociating like crazy, which adds to like anxiety
Mhm.
because you're going through all of these fluctuations and also don't feel like anything is real or anything matters. So it definitely was a really, really hard time. And I really didn't start going back to therapy until like May or June of last year. And that has been life-changing for
Yeah.
sure.
Do you think therapy was one of the main catalysts to like get you kind of over that hump and over that feeling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely don't think that I would, my
I'm a
life
super,
would look.
I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I need to go. I want to go back just for maintenance work. I just like going and being able
Yeah.
to like all my thoughts just be able to get them out of me, even if like I'm okay, meant like I'm not going through any depression or anything like that. There's nothing wrong. I still just think it's super healthy for people to just like be able to go talk to someone, get out their thoughts, and be able to clear their head. So I'm
Yeah,
huge.
from like an unbiased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, and for me, my therapist is a godsend. I love her so much, and
That's
I'm so
awesome.
grateful.
It's hard to find a good therapist too that like
Yeah,
really works
I
with you.
was really nervous about that in the beginning because I was like, man, I just don't know if I have what it takes right now to like try on 5 different therapists. And luckily she was the first one that I worked with, which doesn't happen
Awesome.
often.
No.
And if you are pursuing therapy, like, be patient.
Yeah.
Sometimes it
Yeah.
does take, but she is licensed in doing EMDR. which is an incredible tool to go back and reprocess trauma and kind of move forward from it. And that specifically has been hugely life-changing.
What
You
is,
know,
what is
and
MD? What did you say it was?
EMDR.
EMDR. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a process that activates both sides of your brain at the same time. So
Okay.
you're able to kind
Interesting.
of
Yeah, you can
yeah,
only usually it's only one side or the other, and most people are one side dominant. So yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're able to kind of envision a memory or a trauma and go back and reprocess it. And instead of holding on to the negative cognition of back then, like I'm not worthy or like no, like I'm not loved, whatever, you can go back and look at it and be like, no, I want to believe that I have worth. I want to believe that I'm loved, and establish that that's how it was. And it kind of ripples forward. I tease that it's like time travel. Like you can go back in time
That
and
sounds
like
awesome.
yeah, you can go back in time and like reprocess things with the awareness and experience.
It's hard for people to like go back and dig up past trauma and to like even just put themselves in that spot. So that's cool that they have like a tool to help people do
Yeah,
that.
and we spent a lot of time kind of like establishing a baseline of like I can get out of bed, I can, you know, eat food, I can go to the gym. I'm stable before we started diving into
Right.
reprocessing traumas, which I think is also
Super important.
really beneficial.
Yeah, you need to be stable to be able to go back and relive those things.
Right.
We said two main things that you've really been focusing on. We've already talked about patient, but also balance, I think, is a very important topic to talk about when we're on the topic of mental health. Why do you think balance is so important, and how have you found that you've applied it to your own life?
I am still working on balance every single
too.
day. I swear. Oh man. I don't know. From my experience, like I said, I was working full time since 17. So I have been going a million miles since I was a teenager.
We're
There was
the exact
zero-
same people when it comes to
Yeah,
that.
zero chill, absolutely no chill.
Yeah.
Always felt really guilty about taking time off or like watching TV. I'd be watching a movie or something and be like, I should be working. There's
And
so
now,
much to do.
especially when you're, in an entrepreneurial route, it's even harder because you're the only one
Yeah.
that tells you when to go and when to stop. So
Right. And
Yeah.
I have a home studio. This is my home studio,
Mhm.
in addition to another one that I work out of with an engineer. But it's so much easier to just be like, okay, let me turn off the TV and just go sit down. But I really burnt out hard. And that's something that I worked through with my therapist, where she was like, what if you don't have to do everything all at once? What if balance exists and we can work towards that kind of thing? And my conditioning was so much just like, this is just how it is. You just work super hard all the time, and then eventually you'll be successful. And really, it was through therapy and like through her coaching me that like my self-worth is separate from how many hours a week I work,
Mhm.
or like if I finish this project this week or
Most
whatever.
people don't look at it that way either, which
Yeah,
is
and
very
it's
important.
hard not to, you know.
Yeah.
You're the positive reinforcement of working so hard all the time is like a societal thing, especially in America. You know,
Yeah, I was
where-
gonna say it's the American way. Yeah.
yeah. So I really I don't know if like without her, if I would have gotten to that point. But it started as taking a lunch break and going and sitting outside for 15 minutes and being like, okay, I got sunshine today. And then added on like going to the gym and actually taking care of myself and stuff like that. And the more pieces that I added in that made me feel human into working so much, I wanted that more. And I recognized the benefit to my mental health, and was just like, okay, I think I believe in myself as a human being. I believe that I have worth enough to deserve balance and deserve to be a human, not a songwriting robot. And I also think as an artist, like I believe in myself and I believe in my worth enough that it's like, if I don't finish this song today, is the world going to crumble around me and the apocalypse start? No, I don't think so. Like it's not that serious, you know? I think that that's an important separation.
Something that I've come to realize too is that like there's two things here that I want to say. One is if you work hard enough and you burn yourself out, you just like grind, you keep grinding, it may come faster. But in my head, I had to take a step back and realize like it's okay if it takes a little bit longer, if that means I'm healthier along the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the longevity of
Yeah. Like
project.
we're here for the long haul, not, I don't, it's okay if I don't get it tomorrow. If it happens in 20 years, it's going to happen eventually. So just keep plugging. And I'd rather be
Yeah.
healthy within those 20 years than to burn myself out.
And
And the other thing is too, when you take breaks, you're more effective.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that in and of itself is like what separates a lot of people, because it is so easy to burn out and get discouraged when you're working like a crazy person
Yep.
and not getting the results or the success that you think you should be getting right away. And I think in a creative industry too, it's important to have those times where you are human, where you
Mhm.
do get to experience things that you can write about, or like things that we can talk about in conversation. It's not, I just pull it out of thin air. We have to be human. We have to feel things. We have to experience things and have
Yeah.
connections with people and stuff like that. So that's, yeah.
What kinds of things do you enjoy doing in your free time to balance yourself out?
I am kind of a health nut. I love working
Excellent.
out.
Working out is I used to compete in body. I say this all the time on the podcast, but I used to compete in bodybuilding. So working out is still
That's
like one of
awesome.
my favorite things.
Yeah. I lift like 4 or 5 times a week. I love hiking, love being outdoors, just really like getting sunshine in
Mhm.
general. I always
Vitamin D does your body good.
Yeah, right. I always tease that I'm really like nothing more than just a sentient houseplant. Just like needs water, sunshine, and like love and affection, and I'll be
Yep.
set. But yeah, I have a dog. He is like my whole world. I love him so much. So hanging out with him, taking him on hikes. I'm very close with my family. Um, I have a few very close friends that I love spending time with, and we actually like play D&D on weekends
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah. So I really like talking about like love languages and stuff like that. Mine for sure is spending time with people. So that's very important.
That's
Which is weird for an introvert.
I love that book. Love that book.
It's fascinating.
Very fascinating. I think mine is, quality time and physical touch are my two.
Yeah.
You said something interesting as well before this podcast. The other thing you wanted to talk about was, you said, I'll read it. I think it's easy to get caught up in how long it takes to get somewhere, especially in your music career. I feel like it's never going to happen, but in a lot of ways it already has. What do you mean by like it already has?
We're so lucky to do this. Like,
I agree. I just wanted to get your take on it. I absolutely agree.
Even if we have another job or whatever, like the fact that we are aware of, as artists or creative people in general, that we're aware of what we're passionate about, and we're aware of like what really like sits in your soul and actually matters to you is a huge blessing. There's people that have not found that yet. And then 1, to have that, and 2, to be able to have the potential to make that a career and every single day get to work in an industry that you are so passionate about. Like, that is success already.
Yep.
Like, we're already here. And
it's a privilege to be able to chase our dreams in the first place.
Yeah.
A lot of people in other countries, look at like third world countries, there's no way in hell they're going to have the opportunity that we have.
Right.
The fact that we actually were like born in America and have the opportunities that we do, like, I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's really easy to lose sight of that. Like, just like a month ago, I had a weekend that I was just like, this sucks. Like, this is exhausting. I am discouraged. Like, this is never gonna happen. I feel like I'm just like beating my head against a wall for something that's never gonna happen. And that Monday I got up and like was really honestly not even gonna work on music, and took my dog for a walk, and it was like an especially sunny day, and he was like sniffing flowers while we were walking around. So corny, but like he was sniffing flowers while we were walking around, and I was just like, what am I upset about? Like, why am I feeling this way? Like, look at my life. I built a life that I can go up to the mountains whenever I want. I can take breaks to spend time with people I care about. I can take my dog for a walk whenever I want, like, that's so fortunate. And it does come with a lot of work, but it's like, yes, of course, we're always going to have aspirations and dreams that we're working towards, but like, take a second and look at where we're at.
Stop and smell the roses for a second.
Yeah.
Quite literally using that dog analogy.
Right.
Stop and smell the roses once in a while.
Little guy.
Before we wrap up, what is your favorite like tools and resources that you've used along the way to take care of your mental health? I obviously you mentioned
Mm,
therapy. I just like getting things for the audience to kind of, if they're going through the same thing,
yeah.
maybe some like tools that they can use. What have you used other than
Yeah.
therapy?
So there's a nonprofit called To Write Love on Our Arms that I
Okay.
am a huge supporter of.
What do they do?
They provide access to um, mental health resources. So like
Excellent.
they do fundraisers to pay for therapy and stuff like that for people, but they also have a lot of blog posts and a lot of articles about things that we deal with, different mental illness, mental health struggles, even just like balance and like being a
Hmm.
human being. They're very, very good at curating a place where you can just go read something to know that like you're not alone and also kind of get some insight into how other people deal with it. Um, I also think, there's a bunch of books on different, like anxiety, how to deal with anxiety and stuff
Yep.
like that. But I really think that having a creative outlet is
Yep.
hugely, hugely important. Like even if it's just throwing paint at a canvas, sometimes the things that we feel are a lot and it feels like you can't possibly contain all of that inside. So it's like if you can find an avenue to just go, just release it, just exist as a human being in that moment, I think that's hugely beneficial and I think that everybody could definitely benefit from
Awesome. I'll link
finding a way like that.
that link to their website too in the description of
Yeah.
this episode. But thank you so much for being on the show today. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to get out there?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think
This is
so.
awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Excellent. Next question. What are you most excited for coming up in the rest of this year?
Oh man, more Soundr music. Oh, I can't
Yes.
wait. I'm so
Excellent.
excited sitting on so much new music that I can't wait to
Sounds like it.
release.
Awesome. How can we support you? Where can the listeners find you at?
On all social media at I am Soundr. It's sound with an R on the end.
Awesome. Well, the last final question, ask this every interview. If there's one piece of advice that you could tell yourself when you first started your musical journey, what would it be and why? I know it was a while ago because you started when you were a kid,
Yeah.
but
To just have fun. Just let
yeah,
it be play, be hungry for it, be excited for it, but don't get so wrapped up in the work that you forget to play and enjoy it and just exist in being a creative, which is an incredible field.
and stop and smell the roses.
Yes, yes, always the roses. And collect
Awesome.
plants.
Right, yes,
Start earlier.
yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Soundr, for joining me on the show today and being so open about your challenges with your mental health and what tools you use in order to make yours stronger. If you enjoyed this episode, my only request that you please leave a 5-star review if you're on Apple or Spotify, and like and follow if you're on SoundCloud. Other than that, I'll talk to y'all next week. Bye, guys.